public walls. I think if you're going to entertain people, you entertain them. And there's enough goodness and kindness in stories and things that happen in people's life that they don't have to refer to this. But you see, they sell commercial time at $250,000 per minute with all the violence and stuff. They sell this time for 30 seconds. That's $125,000. I think it's up to $135,000 now for some shows. But anyhow, we'll say $125,000 per second for 30 seconds. So for 30 seconds, if you can subliminally sell a product in 30 seconds, what does 1 hour of this do to your program and you see this violence? So it's pretty well organized to where if they can create fear, people will stay home. If they stay home, they'll watch television. If they watch television, they sell more commercials. Coliseum, it's not torn down or ruins from age. The people tore that building down. They said, we're tired of seeing people being murdered and killed on the street while the other things are being covered up by doing this on Sundays. And so then it went into the Shakespeare's time in the theater where they burned the theaters down. There was no theaters at all. Then in Charles Dickens' time, women were not allowed on the stage. It got so bad. And then even in our country with Take the Motion Pictures in the 20s, they finally found the Hayes office. They said, we got to start censoring these things, because it's all right to stand on your Constitution and say, that's my freedom of speech, I'm standing on the Constitution. Stand on it, but don't trample it. You understand? So that's what they did. So we're doing the same thing now, this cycle. So I went off of the air. I wanted to get off the air 5 years before I went off, because I saw this cycle coming. That the greatest propaganda and the greatest hate show that was ever on the air was Archie Bunker. Because it gave you a chance, if you didn't like a Jewish person, or you didn't like a Catholic, or you didn't like an Italian, you could walk up to those people and say, did you hear what Archie said about the Jews last night, or what he said about the Catholics? You're not saying it, Archie said it. And this caused more hatred in this country than any other program. See, CBS was the head of psychological warfare in World War II. They're also the voice of America now. So they say, if we can use these tactics in foreign countries, let's do the same to sell products in this country. And this is what they've done. So I think home box office has some of the filthiest things I've ever heard in my life on the show. When I first saw my show on following another comedy show, I said, look, no more of this for me. You know, I don't want it. The first one I did. So they said they would space it differently on the next one. I don't know, because I didn't see how they spaced the next one. But now, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike anybody. I'm not fighting causes or anything. I don't hate my enemies because I made them. Yeah. But no, I'm not fighting any causes or anything. It's just I try to answer your questions for you the best I can.
Well, your show was fun, so that was
well, oh, well, thank you.
Do you have any favorite characters from the TV shows when you were?
Yeah, the one that had the best script. I liked them all. They were sort of real. They had a purpose behind each one of them, like everything else with a little propaganda. Like with Freddie the Freeloader, I started him when I was in burlesque. It was during the Depression years, and I wanted to show people that even though they didn't have anything, they did have something. So Freddie take like a sardine can and use a cigar box, you know, and a very elegant little man. And for that reason, and being from the Middle West, I wanted to do jokes about farms and stuff. So I got Clem, and it was the typical type of Toby comedian where he starts out, gets in trouble, and gets out of it. Or he goes to the big city, and the city slicker is going to take him, and he takes the city slicker. So it's basic that kind of comedy. Then they used to hand me jokes about marriage, and I said, look, I won't do these jokes because I love my wife. I don't like these kind of jokes. So I said, oh, wait, get this out of your system. Writers have a great habit of having an argument in a home and then put it in a script, you know. So I said, we'll do one character. J. Newton Numbskull was his name first. He later became George Appleby, and the reason it became George Appleby, the first night we did J. Newton Numbskull on radio, I got sued. There was a guy named J. Newton Numbskull. And then Deadeye, he's the braggart, you know, a brave guy, and the minute trouble shows up, like most of us, we say, yeah, don't you dare hit me, I got this woman with me, and you stand in back of her, you know, one of those things, or you put your glasses on real quick, say, who is that? So the guy won't hit you, you know. Yeah.
Did you make up all of those?
I wrote my own shows. I wrote the outlines for the show. I gave them to the producer of the show. He in turn gave it to the writers. And then the writers would punch up where they thought my things were weak. But it was a funny thing. It was like 6, 7 years before the writers realized that I was writing it. They thought the producer was doing it. And how that came about, one night, I did a preview the night before my show with a live audience. And I had a live audience with one of them. I had no laugh tracks. So this night, the show was great up to a point, and boom. When the kitchen scene was over, nothing went over, see? So he came off and he says, closed the door, and I had my wardrobe man standing there. He says, what are we going to do? I said, what do you mean, what are we going to do? He says, what happened? I says, well, you take out the kitchen scene and the rest of the show will play. He said, well, that was the biggest thing in the show. I says, no, that was the weakest thing in the show because it kills the rest of the show. The laughs are too big, you can't follow it. Oh, he says, I think you got something. So I finished, he leaves, I finished starting to dress. Now I'm awful dry, so I go out to the fountain, which is behind a big sliding door, and I'm getting a drink of water, and I hear him say to the writers, fellas, I got an idea. We'll take out the kitchen scene. And I looked at my wardrobe man, I said, did you hear that? He says, you just finding this out? They don't know you write this show. I said, you gotta be kidding me. He says, no. I said, well, how long is it? He says, ever since I've been here. He said, I sat on all of the readings and everything to find out what wardrobe is going to be needed and stuff on the first reading of the script, see? So I go in, I finish dress, and now the writers, I knew my writers, but I never associated with them. I figured if these guys are going to write, let them write. I don't have to sit there and be artistic and say, oh, I want this. Why argue? You can waste more time arguing than you can and say, okay, we'll try it. Try it. You know, you got an audience out there, they're going to tell you anyhow. So as I walked by, all the writers are there, and they're all sitting around with little pads and stuff standing in the hall there. So as I went by, and I said, going to be a good show, fellas. Just don't touch the kitchen scene. And I walked away. He called me at my house about an hour later because it took that time to get home. He says, don't you ever embarrass me in front of the writers like that again. I says, I won't, because I've already called Mr. Paley in New York, and you're no longer on the show. Yeah. Yes, dear.
Mr. Skelton, do you find any difference in what people think is funny today than you did 20, 30 years
No,
ago?
I'll let you answer your own question, dear. Have you ever seen Midsummer Night's Dream?
Yes.
Same now as it was then. If it's funny, it's funny. The basic jokes, there's only 7 situations you can get jokes from. There are thousands and millions of jokes. When they say there's only 7 jokes, there are 7 situations that comedy can derive from. And as long as they're used, people will laugh, you know. Yeah. I don't know what's funny. I'm just, you know, I just go out on the stage. I laugh half the time at the stuff myself because why should I be the only idiot not getting it, you know? So I stand up there like a big idiot and I laugh. I have fun. I have fun, guys. I mean, why take life seriously? You're not going to get out of it alive anyhow, you know? Yeah.
New generation has come along now that doesn't remember you from the television days. But of course, I'm sure they've heard of you through their parents or older brothers and sisters. And I'm just wondering, how do they perceive you not having seen the television shows?
Well, this is a strange thing. People used to walk up and say to their children, you know who this is? It's Red Skelton. Oh, yeah, yes, yes. I paint now, and on David Brinkley's show coming up, either this week or next week, there's a whole thing about my art. I sell more art than any other artist in the country. I sell to the galleries for $20,000. They get up to $75,000 for them. They're doing a whole thing on Dave Brinkley's about my paintings. Now I have reproductions of my originals that I sell all over the country. Also have lithographs and things like that in print form. And now when people walk up with their children and say, do you know who this is? They say, no. So that's Red Skelton. They'll say, oh, we have one of your paintings. See? So I have a new, by the time I'm, let's say, they're about 21 years old. If someone told them I wasn't Rembrandt, they'd kill them, because Mom says I was a great artist. They're talking about television, how good I was on that. They probably hate the art, but the kids think you're talking about the art because that's what they know. So it's worked out. They do know. If you come to the performance, I'm pretty sure you'll see little children in the audience. And now I stand and I look at them before I go on stage. And I spot these little kids in the audience. And you can see them sitting there like, what am I here for, you know? And the next thing you know, you see them setting up, and then the next thing you see them slapping their legs, and then they'll crawl down the aisle and get as close to the stage as they can, and usually they're the first ones to come up to ask for autographs when it's over. So it doesn't take long for, you can't fool animals or children, and we're all children at heart, basically. We're childlike. We're not childish, but we are childlike, all of us. So I think when anyone sees those qualities and anything that relieves them for a minute, just think 1 minute or 1 second of laughter, you've forgotten your problems for that second, and that second becomes very valuable. So it doesn't take long to win them over, actually. I don't want to sound egotistical, but I try to answer best I can. Yeah. Yes, dear?
Particular type audience that you enjoy playing to?
People. And people, and when the show is over, a lot of people walk up and say, "God, he's a really important man," and all this stuff. When the show is over, I always walk back out on the stage when the theater's empty, and I listen, and I don't hear any applause. I don't hear any laughter or anything. And I say, I was important while I was on the stage. That's the only time you're important, while you're doing your work and being accepted. And then it brings you back down so that when you see people, I'm just as surprised as everybody else. That's why I walk up and say hello to people. See, my mother taught me that God was made, man was made in God's image. And I've never met God in person. And the next guy just might be him. So I treat the devil the same way too, because you don't know which way you're going to go. Yeah, yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
While you're here, since you'll be here quite a number of days before your performance, will you gather little local tidbits and have local?
That's what I
jokes
come
in
in
there?
for. I hear things like one lady says to me, "It's the first time I've ever seen you live." Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to understand with a southern dialect, you know. And this one little boy says to me, he said over in Atlanta, he said, "I had your autograph," and I said, "Hmm." He said, "Can I have your autograph?" I said, "Yeah, what's your name?" He said, "Ratchet." I said, "Ratchet?" He said, "Ratchet." I said, "How do you spell it?" He says, "R-I-C-H-A-R-D." So things like that, you tell it to the audience, and then it hits them funny too. See, with comedy, if you see yourself, you'll laugh. If it's too close to you, you'll say, "I know somebody like that." See? So you're always at hand. Do what people recognize, and it becomes rather funny. So if you use things about, like one fellow walked to me last night, he says, "You want a great opener for your show?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "Walk out and say, 'How about them dogs?'" And now I see, I didn't know what it was until they told me they beat that football team. So he says, "Just walk out and say, 'How about them dogs?'" You can always get in conversations like that. If you go in someplace and there's nobody there, especially men, they walk up and say, "How about them Dodgers?" Huh? They say, "Yeah, say, how about that?" And right away you're friends, you know. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
You seem to have a fascination for clowns and circuses. Where did that begin?
Well, I was with the circus. I was with Hagenback and Wallace Circus. I played Columbia with Hagenback and Wallace Circus years ago. I played there with a tent show. And then I played around this part of the country with medicine shows and tent shows. I was with John Lawrence Stock Company all through this part of when I was a little boy. I got in show business when I was 10 years old. I go to school in the winter and work in the summer until I was 14. Then I had the doctor to goof up a birth certificate for me so that I could get a working permit saying that I was 16. I was tall anyhow. When I was in the first grade, the kids all called me Big Red because I was taller than the rest of them. They thought I was their father, you know. Yeah, I've always been very tall and stuff. Yeah. I don't just paint clowns, by the way. I do portraits, still lifes, landscapes, and I do landscaping too. That's, yes.